We spent a lot of time charting the external forces that shape us, history, sociology, shared culture, all of it.
Right, how groups behave as a whole.
Exactly. But for this deep dive, we're pulling the lens way back.
Yeah.
We're focusing on the internal source code, on you.
And that's a really necessary shift. We're moving away from studying group behavior as this monolithic thing
Yeah.
to understanding the individual genetic predisposition of the people who actually make up those groups.
So our mission today is to unpack how your inherent traits, your individual wiring, really influences the choices you make inside a social structure.
Whether that's religious, political, ethnic, it doesn't matter.
Right, because if we want to understand why two people, let's say two siblings, can end up on completely opposite sides of an argument, we have to look inward.
And this is where the research in behavioral genetics lands a genuine surprise. When we look at social group consciousness, the shared belief that drive group choices genetics actually plays a more significant role than the shared environment.
That feels like it challenges, decades of thinking, the whole primacy of nurture.
It does, but it also makes a lot of intuitive sense. If genetics drives disposition, it explains that radical diversity of viewpoints we see even within the closest families.
It provides a more holistic explanation.
Yes. The unity or the division we see out in society, it's rooted in this diversity of individual identities. And this model, it helps us categorize and even predict those responses.
Okay, so let's define the core mechanism here. What exactly is individual genetic predisposition?
Simply put, it's the inherited, internally driven way you think and behave when you interact with the world. It's like an organized set of characteristics that defines your cognitive capacity, your motivations, even your resilience.
And we need to be really clear, this isn't the same as personality, which is the word most of us would use.
No, it's a critical distinction. Personality is often that outward emotional response. You feel angry, you act friendly.
It's a reaction to a stimulus.
Exactly. Predisposition, as we're defining it here, is rooted in genetics. It's the inherent capacity and resilience, the raw wiring that directs how you handle information, regardless of the emotional mask you might put on.
Let's make this practical. Let's use that hypothetical family scenario from the source material.
Yeah.
A nuclear family, 4 kids, same roof, but they all develop completely distinct ways of dealing with reality.
It's a perfect demonstration of the power of these intrinsic traits.
So first you have John. John demands his own way. He's manipulative, he seeks power, and his typical response to being told what to do is defiant.
Why should I if I don't want to? That's a classic John response.
Then there's Mary. She is the ultimate people pleaser. She prioritizes harmony, she's obedient, very fearful of being alienated.
So her response is passive. It's the whatever, or okay, if that will make you happy, even if it won't make her happy.
Next up is Jose. He's the constant challenger. But he's not defiant like John. He's just inquisitive. He questions everything.
Right.
And he genuinely sees merit in both sides of an issue, which can make him look indecisive. His signature word is why.
Why? Yeah. And finally, Bertha. Bertha is intensely focused on her thing. She's an innovative risk taker, assertive, sometimes comes across as a know-it-all.
Because her self-worth is tied to the strength of her ideas. She values acceptance of her thoughts more than personal acceptance. Her go-to response is often, I know what to do.
So you have 4 people, same house, but they're all driven by these fundamentally different internal engines. And what's so fascinating is that these differences, they show up incredibly early in what we call temperament.
Exactly. Temperament is that measurable early sign of this genetic predisposition. We're talking within the first weeks of life.
Wow.
And the research estimates that somewhere between 20 and 60% of a child's temperament is from genetics.
And those early traits like activity level, adaptability, sociability, they tend to stick, right?
They absolutely do. Psychologists often talk about easy, slow to warm up, or difficult children. So if you have an easy child who has generally positive experiences, it reinforces their view of the world as a friendly place. A difficult child might perceive the world as challenging. And these early views, they just solidify over time.
This brings us to the real aha moment in behavioral genetics. This is where the data just completely shifts our understanding. Let's talk about the science. Phenotypes and genotypes.
The simplest way to think of it is this. Genotype is your inherited genetic wiring. It's the software. Phenotype is the observable output of that software interacting with the world, like your height or how much risk you take.
And the really surprising findings come from Turkheimer's 3 laws of behavior genetics. You hit us with the main data points.
Okay, so the first law, About half the variance in any measured psychological characteristic, how you think, feel, respond, is due to heredity.
Half. Okay, so genes matter a lot. We get that. But what's the bombshell?
The second law, and this is it, the effect of being raised in the same family, that shared environment, is smaller than the effect of genetics.
Wait, hold on a second. The environment shared by siblings, the parents, the house, the schools, that's officially less influential than their unique genetic makeup.
That's what the data says. It flies in the face of so much pop psychology.
It really does.
And the third law just rounds this out. A big chunk of our individual differences comes from things that are totally unique to us, not our genes, not our shared family, just non-shared individual experiences.
So you have three buckets: genes, unique experiences, and the shared family environment. And the shared family part is the weakest link in the chain.
The evidence is remarkably consistent. You look at studies on adoptive siblings who are raised together. By adulthood, they show virtually no resemblance in disposition or personality.
Wow.
Which strongly suggests that while parents are crucial for instilling values and tradition, they have a shockingly limited long-term effect on that child's foundational genetic predisposition.
So parents aren't off the hook, but their job is more about guidance than fundamentally reprogramming the hard drive.
Precisely. They instill a framework, a set of values, traditions, but the individual, based on their predisposition, ultimately chooses which of those to apply or reject or expand on later in life. It's a balancing act.
Accepting this genetic influence is what gives us the framework for understanding those four siblings we just met.
Yeah.
So these are the four core categories of genetic predisposition. What's the purpose of categorizing people like this?
Well, the goal isn't to judge or create a hierarchy. It's about fostering empathy and effective collaboration.
Okay.
When we look at groups, we see this crucial trade-off. Groups dominated by one predisposition type, they have high harmony, a real sense of belonging, but they become highly inefficient when faced with complex decisions.
And the reverse is also true. Diverse groups have more friction, more
bumping up against each other, as Steve Jobs put it. But they are far better equipped to innovate and handle complexity.
Okay, so let's break down the four types based on what motivates them. Let's start with the two smaller, more extreme groups.
Right. First, you have the self-directed. This is estimated at about 12% of the population.
And their motivation?
It's all about power, adoration, and self-gratification. They're often lacking in guilt or empathy, they can be manipulative, and they operate with a mindset where failure is just not an option. It's rooted in narcissistic basic needs.
Okay. Then on the other end, the intellectually directed, around 10%.
They're driven by thought leadership and recognition. They define their own unique values and focus intensely on a specific expertise, often with real tunnel vision.
These are the paradigm shifters.
They are, but they value the acceptance of their ideas far more than personal acceptance, which can lead them to be dismissive of people who disagree.
Okay, now for the bulk of society. The internally directed, about 29%.
Their motivation is the active pursuit of truth beyond their immediate social circle. They're continuous knowledge seekers, very analytical, highly adaptable.
And they have lower cognitive dissonance.
Much lower. They're comfortable holding conflicting information while they try to connect the dots. They're often seen as rebels because they're always seeking an individualized worldview.
And finally, the largest group, almost half the population, the externally directed, at 49%.
Their primary drivers are security, fear, faith, and acceptance. Their beliefs are shaped very heavily by external leaders and family figures. They gravitate toward authoritarian structures.
They resist change.
They do. They exhibit high cognitive dissonance when their beliefs are challenged, and they often see the world in very stark black and white terms.
That clarity on motivation it's critical. So if our genetic predisposition shapes how we process information, how does that wiring then influence our ideological beliefs?
The link is very strong. Ideological attitudes tend to align directly with an individual's cognitive predisposition. Research shows, for example, that people with extremist attitudes often struggle with complex mental processing.
It's the mental path of least resistance.
It is. They're psychologically prone to seeing the world in simple black and white terms. And this simplicity often pairs with difficulty in emotional regulation, impulsivity.
And dogmatism.
And dogmatism, yes. The unwillingness to process credible evidence that contradicts what they already believe. They literally struggle to integrate that information, even at a basic perceptual level.
Which raises a huge question for all of us, especially today. If our innate, unchecked thinking is so biased by our predisposition, what tool do we even have to fight that?
We have to actively cultivate critical thinking. It's a disciplined process of conceptualizing, analyzing, and evaluating information. It is not our innate logic. It is a learned skill.
The quality of our lives depends on the quality of our thoughts.
It really does. Excellence in thought requires systematic cultivation. We have to heed that advice from thinkers like George Orwell and constantly ask, how do you know that's true? What's the source? Who said it, and what's their motivation?
Because the easiest person to deceive is always yourself. So this internal wiring, it also feeds into how we construct our sense of self. Social identity theory says our self-concept is built from our personal identity, our traits, and our social identity, which is our group affiliation.
Right, and we can visualize this through 4 interconnected lenses.
Yeah.
First, your personal identity. That's your unique makeup, your genetic predisposition.
Okay.
Then your self-identity, which is your internal concept of your own confidence and values.
Then you have relational identity.
Yes, defined by those important one-on-one relationships. And finally, social identity, which is your membership in various groups, political, national, religious.
And the key to this whole system is understanding we develop our sense of self by seeing how others see us. The whole looking glass self idea.
Which means honest feedback is essential to truly knowing who we are.
And that's where a tool like the Johari window becomes incredibly useful.
It's a simple 4-quadrant tool for self-awareness. You have the open self, what you and others both know.
Yeah.
And the hidden self, what you know but hide from others.
But the real fertile ground for growth is in the blind self.
That's it. What others know about you that you are completely unaware of, those blind spots caused by your unchecked predisposition, uncovering those is crucial.
And the last one is the unknown self, what nobody knows yet.
Right. So actively seeking that 360-degree feedback to uncover what's in your blind self is, well, it's uncomfortable, but it's essential for growth.
So wrapping this all up, what does this mean for you, the listener? We started by saying that our basic human problems are shared, but how we see them and how we solve them varies wildly based on our predisposition.
And that diversity leads to what the philosopher Martin Buber called polarized communication. The world splits into 2 camps, each one convinced it has all the truth and the other has all the falsehood.
It highlights the challenge, but also the value of that diversity. Integrated groups, ones with varied consciousness, they achieve better results.
As Ken Blanchard said, no one of us is as smart as all of us. That friction is what polishes ideas into something truly great.
So awareness of your own primary genetic predisposition is really the first step toward empathy for others.
It is.
And since social interaction is vital, and that 360-degree feedback is the only way to really see our blind spots, we want to leave you with this question. What tangible steps can you take, maybe this week, to seek feedback from diverse sources outside of your usual group? How will you uncover those behaviors lurking in your blind self, the ones that might be secretly driven by your primary genetic predisposition? It's time to find out what others see that you don't, because that, right there, is the path to better thinking.